2013, like min raising was bad. Limping, immediate fish. Donking, terrible. Now everyone, like lots of people are limping, lots of people start donking, like min raising is the standard. I think for every athlete in everything, or everything you do, it's always the same. It's your technical knowledge, your physical capability, your psychic or mental capabilities. I think, so for me there's one step before that when it's around your mindset, how you approach things. Because I think, Rafi, the spot we're in is a spot a lot of people are in. And I would say it's not so much about your technical knowledge, where it is about the trajectory of how you will progress over time. And that's the thing I try to, like people who say, oh, I want to make it, you know, in terms of become a pro, play full time, travel to stops, like have freedom in a sense, make enough money that you can make free choices and enjoy what you're doing. I would say the number one thing I say is do not look at where you are right now. Like that's also, and that refers to all of the, like when you tilt about outcomes, think about it this way, where the outcomes that happen right now matter literally zero. Like whether you win this tournament or not, you cash $800 or not, matters literally zero. It matters if you progress as a player and as a person or not. Because that's the thing, if you look at that trajectory, it doesn't make a difference if you have a 20k bankroll or a 120k bankroll, because if you're a great player, like you like what you're doing, and you're in great shape, the EV you make from then on is 300k a year. So the 100k difference is not and like I'm talking about how, like in your case it's maybe 18k EV or 8k EV or something like that. So the variance in the beginning doesn't matter at all. That's, in hindsight, one of the things I did by far the best compared to all the people around me, is I was just constantly investing money in my growth. So I was playing stakes I couldn't beat because I wanted to. I played cash games against the best. I played hyper sit and goes. I played heads up sit and goes. I played because it constantly kept me to get better at the game. And so I played 25-50. This boosted my tournament game so much because I played against the best. It was like suddenly now there was the first person who started betting 15% in a 4-bet pot. And I was like, interesting. Okay, why is one of the best cash game players doing that? You know, so I learned so much from playing against them, where maybe I lost 22k in EV, but for the trajectory of my career, I had 5 more years where I could implement the things that I learned from them into all the other things I was doing. So in your shoes, I would think about it exactly the same way. When you talk about a hand that you struggle post-flop, you have to struggle. If you don't struggle right now, you're doing it wrong. That's the thing, the struggle is the best thing that can happen to you. If I play, like I started playing spin and goals right now, I sit there and I struggle every third hand. Every third hand. I played so many shots that can probably more than all of you combined, and I still sit there with 6.3 big blinds, and I'm not sure if queen 4 off, you know, like it's 7.2, call it out. Like there's so much granular knowledge there where you can always go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. It's about your mindset if you want to find out about it. Because you can also sit there and be like, okay, I play the hands I know, I see bet the sizes I know, and like then thinking is zero. You can play an entire MTT session and think zero. But you can also then go out of your way and think like, okay, why do I believe the things that I believe right now? And what are things that I believe that might be good to change? And then you start sitting there, and like still today I sit there and I'm like, should I open ace-3 suited undergun or not? Because it is not so clear. Even if there is a chart, the moment the big blind VPI is 4% too little, I open it. So it's this spot where I constantly think, like I mark 50 hands a session. Even if I play, you know, it's just every 10th hand I play, I'm like, I don't know, maybe a different sizing against that specific player, information that comes in and so on. So what I want to say is, I think the beauty of the game as well is to create an environment for you where you're at your maximum capacity to grow and not at your maximum capacity to make money right now. That is the difference. So if you talk about streaming and you talk about your career and you talk about skill level, it's about being a better player, you will play higher stakes. Playing higher stakes, you will get more viewers. Like understanding the game better, you can explain your plays better. Like you can collaborate with more people, you can do more stuff in the future, you can travel to more live spots. You like it's everything comes from just being better at what you're doing. So I would say the main thing is forget about any result. Like it's literally playing is only to hone your craft right now. If you make 1K or 3K a month, it shouldn't make a difference. If it changes your lifestyle, okay, that's a difference, right? Like make sure that you are free and that you don't have to think about food and rent and like all that stuff. Yes, but anything beyond that, all into your growth. And design an environment that you like. That's also something. I think the reason why I learned so fast is because I wanted to know. It's like when I talk to people and they tell me, oh, I study 9 in the morning, 2 hours, and like it's kind of a grind. Like I never had that in my entire career. I marked 40 hands. I wanted to know. I woke up. I sat down. I looked it up because I wanted to know, not because I set a time limit. Like if you don't want to study, then studying is more like learning. It's asking someone, hey, how would you play this? Or it's like, I often play hands. I'm like, I really want to know what a solver would do with these times. Like I want to know, and that drives me learning. So I would also take these opportunities right now. If you feel like you don't want to learn, then look into that. Because if you don't feel like learning, there's no environment, like there's nothing that will like help you force yourself to learn. Maybe then you want to play poker in a different way. It's also no problem to play it for fun and 5 hours a week. Like I think that's really one of the biggest misconceptions I come across all the time is people who say, oh, I want to be a full-time pro and I want to play high stakes, but they don't like most of the things that it require playing that. Yeah. So it's like if you don't enjoy learning that 30 hours a week, then like no, then maybe it's not. If you just like, same was for me. It's like 3 years ago. If I don't enjoy it, I cannot compete on the high level. So I can play for fun and I would travel when I want to, but I'm not going to be on that level. So that's as much for that high level. I would really suggest you here as well to use that time to put all of it into your growth as a person and with that also as a player. Like I would literally just focus on that and then take each area that you can and try to look at, okay, how can I get better at that? Like I make examples, grind schedule. It was mind-boggling to me with the guys in the grind house how I looked at each of their schedule and I was like, what are you doing? It's like so often they started like at weird times and they played 3 tables and then they mixed tournaments that made no sense and then they play. I was like, when I sit down, I know exactly when I sit down, I know exactly the schedule I'm gonna play. I play 9 tables the entire time and when I'm done I go to sleep. Like there's no this laptop there on the 3 table. Like I play, and when I play I focus because I want to play. And this entire thing of like I start a session and in the middle of the session I don't really want to play anymore, that to me is that's not proper prep. And so that is just one thing that sets you up for success. Same thing with preflop ranges, right? Like it is one of the easiest things to learn. It's like literally a pop quiz. It's like if you don't understand what to open from the cutoff 30 big blinds deep, like you don't need to play a tournament to know that. You can literally you can play a quiz where you just open close. Like that's the thing where when you only VPI 24%, like I don't mean that as an insult, but you ignore one of the most obvious common knowledges basically, right? And that's the thing where I'm saying is if something is obvious, try to work on the obvious things first and then the other things, because then you have a better starting point and then the struggle comes and that's great because then you're exactly at the point where you should be. Yeah. Learning the things that you should be improving at. And I think the other thing what you mentioned is around that mindset of when you question what. So I think also one of the biggest reasons, if I look at poker players' progression, I very often have that feeling that it's like this type of progression. It's like there's not really progression. So it's I see so many in my career, like so many players where I feel like the only thing they do is they execute a program they learned, kind of, it's like just grind it out. It's like they grind 3-4 days a week, they play exactly the same style, nothing changes basically, there's not much style. Like it's this, I've seen so many players, like they reach a certain, they grind out, they reach a certain level and then there's content and then it's like, okay. And the thing with content is, it always comes with the idea of I know now. There's always this point where you think, now I know. Now I get it. Like now I've figured it out. And it's the way people think right now. PO came out and people are like, now it's solved. So no. It's like there's gonna be solvers that will crush PO by 10, 15 big blinds. Like it's gonna be totally different. Like even right now I see already we have solutions like everything, like there's going to be certain things where everything you believe to be true will totally change. Because even the pre-flop solutions we have right now are based on simplified post-flop solutions, so that will change entirely. We have no multi-way properly solved. We don't have multi-way deep stack. We don't have it all solved. ICM is a big fuck up. Like there's so many things where you will look at it in 3-4 years and poker will be played totally different. So be aware that everything you believe right now is bad in that sense of in the framework of you believing it's good or it's fine. Like there's nothing good and nothing bad, it's just endless room to learn. So when you think that because you said one specific sentence that you're happy with your game right now, and that's great, but I also want to push that there's never this point where it's good now. Yeah. And I don't mean that in a sense of beating yourself up all the time, but it's more like, oh, curiosity, like, oh, what about this? Like, maybe I can do that, because that's this level of, it's a level of ignorance where people stop, like, you also use it as like, oh, this guy's bad, he did that. 2013, like, min raising was bad, or 12 or 11, like everyone, like, limping, immediate fish, donking, terrible. Now everyone, like lots of people are limping, lots of people start donking, like min raising is the standard, like it's so many things where like if people say something, assume something without even having any type of idea why they came to that conclusion, mostly because it's just things people say and then they start believing that. And the same for PO, right? Like, does anyone know how, like, can you really understand what the mathematical equation, the equilibrium is, so that you can understand where it might be flawed, right? Like that's the thing. Can people really understand ICM and the calculation behind it to understand, maybe that doesn't match so much? Like this is the thing where I want to challenge you to start thinking in ways where, no, what makes sense to you? Like start being independent, where something comes in and you look at it, does that make sense to you? And being really, really honest of like, do you really understand what that is? Do you really understand what someone talks about ICM? Do you, like, even if it's a really good player, do you really understand what he means? Because sometimes they don't know what they mean. And that's the thing where I've seen it so many times, people who are great at arguing, great at making statements, like these are the people who get listened to the most, but it's not necessarily the best game plan.